I was blessed a couple of weeks ago to take part in a memorial service in our memorial garden. In-laws and family members of our congregation's bodies were the ashes were scattered, and there were 30 or 40 people who joined us. One of those couples I met, I'd never met before. They were a younger couple. They were from the upper Midwest, and I discovered, much to my chagrin, that they had one thing that they did not have in common. They both loved baseball. But one of them was a St. Louis Cardinals fan. And the other one was a Chicago Cubs fan. It's going to get ugly, isn't it? And we talked about how I didn't realize the hatred. Did you realize that, David? You're a baseball fan. Between the Cubs and the Cardinals. I mean, it was ugly. They decided they still love each other, but they couldn't talk about that. I got home that night. I turned on ESPN, watched the baseball game. You want to guess which two teams were playing? Ladies and gentlemen, for much of the last 10 years, you and I together have been talking about and listening for the whispers of God. The still, small voices of life that are either coincidences or indigestion or the power of the holy God in our unholy world. Sometimes you can't tell the difference. But every now and then, God shouts. Every now and then, God speaks in a cataclysmic way that you can never miss it. That day when there was absolute darkness and nothing at all, and then Genesis 1 says that God blew his voice across the nothingness and created everything there is, and had you been there, you'd have never missed him. The day when the creator of the entire universe became a part of creation. We call it Christmas. And it is the most cataclysmic event that has ever taken place. The day that God opened that tomb and rolled away the stone and announced to everybody who would listen that life conquers death and not the other way around. You talk about putting the world on its ear. And now today, Pentecost. It's not just the birth of the church, it's the coming of the world, the kingdom of God into our world. The rush of a mighty wind, and every single person in that room felt it. And the core of earth was shaken by the power of that wind. Listen to the words. When the day of Pentecost had come, they were all together in one place, and suddenly a sound came from heaven like the rush of a mighty wind, and it filled all the house where they were sitting. And there appeared to them tongues of fire, distributed and resting on each one of them, and they were all filled with the Holy Spirit. And there were dwelling in Jerusalem Jews, men of every nation under heaven, and they were bewildered because each one heard them speaking in his own language. Parthians and Medes and Elamites and residents of Mesopotamia, Judea and Cappadocia, Pontus and Asia, Phrygia and Pamphylia, Egypt and the parts of Libya belonging to Cyrene, and visitors from Rome, both Jews and proselytes. And all were amazed and perplexed. What's this mean? But Peter, remember Peter? Didn't have a word of support. When Jesus stood before Pilate, Peter stands up and gives the first Christian sermon. And it's a doozy. I wish we could preach that way. Men of Judea and all who dwell in Jerusalem, let this be known to you and give ear to my voice. These men are not drunk as you suppose. In the last day it shall be, God declares, I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh. And what happens? Your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. I will pour out my spirit, and they shall prophesy. And I will show wonders in the heavens above, signs on the earth beneath, blood and fire and vapor of smoke. For the sun will be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the day of the Lord comes, the great and manifest day, and it shall be whoever calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. Wow. You can almost feel the world still shaking. I want to make the argument, ladies and gentlemen, that it still is. Not only the church at large, but this place, the church in here. And in order to show you a little bit what that might mean, I need to tell you a story. And I apologize to those of you who have heard it before. There have been 6 or 7 stories and events in my life that have framed who I have become as a pastor. And this is one of them. It's a little dinky story. I apologize for your insulting your intellect. But the name of the story is Once Upon a Puddle. This is a story about some fish who lived in a very small puddle of water. Every day the little fish would fight. In such cramped quarters there isn't much else to do except swim in circles and hunt for water bugs. Their stagnant puddle was cradled between the roots of an ancient oak just beside a swiftly flowing river. Life never seemed to change much for the puddle fish. One morning as they swam in circles and hunted for water bugs, there was a sudden noise. Splash! An amazing, brightly colored fish had jumped into the riverside puddle. This large fish was red and blue and golden scales. At first, the frightened puddle fish huddled together against the puddle's far edge. Finally, one of them asked, "Where'd you come from?" "I come from the sea." "The sea? What's the sea?" "No one has ever told you about the sea?" "Why, the sea is what fish are made for. It isn't like this little puddle. The fish needn't swim in the circles all day, for it can dance with the tides. There are many splendid sea creatures. It's endless and sparkling clear. The sea is what fish are made for." A pale gray puddle fish spoke up. "How do you get to the sea?" "It's a simple matter. You jump from this little puddle into that river and trust that the current will take you to the sea." Astonishment clouded the puddle water. At long last, a brave little fish swam forward with a hard, experienced look in his eye. He was a realist fish. "It's pleasant to talk about this sea business, but if you ask me, we have to face reality. And what is reality? Obviously, swimming in circles and hunting for water bugs. It's all pie in the sea nonsense." The sparkling fish smiled. "You don't understand. I've been there. I've seen the sea. It's far more wonderful." Yet before he could finish, the realist fish swam away. Next, there neared a fish with a nervous twitch in his tail. He was a scared fish. "If I understand you were supposed to jump into that river?" "Yes. For a fish who wants to get to the sea, the way lies through the river." Have you seen the river? It's just a small fish. That river is big, and I just can't. Sparkling fish whispered, "Trust me. Trust that the river will take you someplace good." But before he could finish, the scared fish hurried away. Finally, there swam out a figure who seemed very solemn and learned. He was a theologian fish. Calmly, he swam to the middle of the puddle and adjusted his spectacles. "My brothers and sisters, our distinguished visitor has expressed many views which merit certain consideration. However, my colorful friend, we must also conclude that those fishes who also gracefully inhabit this humble puddle have expressed many views which merit consideration. By all means, let's be reasonable. We can work this out. Why not form a discussion group? We could meet every Tuesday at 7 o'clock. And I'm sure some puddle fish would be happy to bring coffee and donuts." The eyes of the puddle fish were sad. This will never do. Talking is important, but in the end, it's a simple matter. You jump. You jump out of this little puddle and trust that the river will take you to the sea. Besides, don't you know summer is coming? Puddle fish murmured, "Summer is coming. What difference does that make?" The sparkling fish said, "Summer's coming. The spring rains that filled this little puddle to overflowing, but this puddle's going to dry up someday. No puddle lasts forever." The puddle fish were stunned. But then the realist fish swam out. There was dark contempt on his face as he spat out the words, "That's just like you religious people. When you don't honestly convince people of what you believe, you try and scare them. You're just one of those end-of-the-puddle fanatics." He swam away in disgust. Then all of the colors of the sparkling fish brightened into a warm glow. He whispered, "It's a simple matter. You jump from this little puddle and trust that the river will take you to the sea. Who will come and follow me?" At first, nobody moved. But then a few puddle fish swam to his side. Together they jumped into the river, and the current swept them away. The remaining puddle fish were silent for quite a while. Then once again, they began to swim in circles and hunt for water bugs. Pentecost, the gift of the Spirit, the splashing of the presence of the resurrected Christ into our little puddle. Winds blow, the earth shakes, the sparkling fish comes. And then, ladies and gentlemen, there is this marvelous cataclysmic invitation. Jump. Follow me, and I will take you to the sea. Pentecost is the presence of the mighty power of God shaping and transforming and shaking the church. That's happening, I think, in the offices of the ELCA. Bishop Eaton has invited all of us in every single congregation in the ELCA to take part in a study that will try and figure out where the ELCA is headed, and I think that's a good thing. Because in order for the ELCA to remain active and vibrant in this culture, I think the ELCA needs to be systemically restructured. I think it's happening in the offices of Gettysburg Seminary. For years, decade, two little puddle seminaries, Gettysburg and Philadelphia, have existed and talked about merging and doing stuff together. And finally, those words are beginning to turn into actions, and that's a good thing, because I think in order to meet the needs of this culture, we need to do seminary in a different way. I think it's happening in the walls of this offices of this church. Resurrection Life. Remember the name. It's the way that disciples will be lifted up and grown and empowered and sent in this place. It is an invitation to every single person in this room to become the people God has called us to be. And that's a good thing, because it will change those of us who participate in Resurrection Life and this place for the better. I am so thrilled about this. Stephen and I have talked about this, that we think we might need to publicize this and to publish it so that other churches can catch a glimpse of the wind that blows. Pentecost, the cataclysmic splash of God. And into that splash, God offers us this: jump. Follow me, and I will take you to the sea. Some churches and some people will pass. I suspect that what they would rather do is swim in circles and hunt for water bugs My prayer is that this place and many of you will not be counted among them.